Happy New Year, people. I hope you all had a good one. I certainly did, and I'm raring to get going on the LP400 project. Now, at the end of last year, we took the body off. Now, the plan was, I was just going to leave the body resting on top while we did some changes to the chassis underneath. But when we pulled the body off, I soon realised that this roll hoop, if you want to call it that, basically anything from the dashboard upwards, it's been chopped and changed that much because this has now got the periscope roof, and what's been added, it's been cut and welded rather than bent with a bender. Now obviously this has not got to pass any sort of FIA stuff, it's not a race car, but you know, it's my name on it at the end of the day, and you know, if that ever was to have a crash, then that's going to be the weak point. You know, we've got a bender now, we might as well just chop it out and do it properly. Because even up here at the top, you know, for some reason it's been cut there, even though that could have technically been a straight bar. And even just the top, you know, just sort of looks like scaffolding, which should be a nice bent bar in there. And then you can see it on the back here, where it's been, so this looks like a nice bit of tube, and then here it sort of all goes manky from that point, where I think that's where they've chopped it out, and then they've added all sort of from that weld upwards. We're going to chop all that off, so we need to move the body. Now the garage is pretty full because everyone else's project's in it, so I have got the Metro 6R4 project next door, which some people will remember from a while ago on the channel. Now we will get back on this at some point, but we're going to essentially carry the LP400 body round, and for now we will place it on top of the Metro because this is just, you know, sat in the corner. That's the engine for Liam's Datsun 260. We'll do an update on that soon as well. But yeah, we'll plunk the body there, and then we can start looking at replacing all that on the top. But I do want to start 2024 adding to the car rather than chopping out, because that's all we've been doing up to now. So we've got the gearbox mounted up to the engine, and once the body is out of the way, I think I want to plonk that in just so we can start getting engine mounts mocked up and gearbox mounts. Now it's not going to stay in, it'll have to come out several times, but it'll just be nice to see something actually going back into the car rather than constantly chopping it out. So let's get to it. Alright, so while we're waiting for enough people to take the body off, I have took the gearbox off the engine because obviously I can't get the engine crane in with the body on. So we put the gearbox in, and I thought now would be a good time to explain my decision on the drive shaft hoops, because I did hear little whispers that the previous builder was not too happy about these. Now I don't really know why, because you know, you look at F1, they build cars to such tight regulations, and each and every car is different. That's because everyone builds different cars. It's just the way it is, and this is the way we're going to do it. Now when I mounted the gearbox, I've got two concerns. Obviously drive shaft angle, which ideally we're aiming for 0 degrees at ride height. Now that's not always practical. Also we're looking at clearance on the frame and obviously clearance on the engine. You don't want the engine to be, you know, mega high. So we've got the gearbox as low as I would practically want it. It's sat on a bit of 3B2 at the front there, so it's got 2 inches of clearance. And if we turn the angle finder back on, so that is at 4.43 degrees of slope. That's at ride height. Obviously these bars were put in by the previous builder when the body's on to simulate ride height. Now pretty happy, 4 degrees will do. It's not ideal, but obviously, you know, it's a kit car, it is what it is. Now obviously if we left this tube in, that bar drive shaft would obviously be a couple of mil into that already, and that is before we've got any compression on the spring. So, you know, I could technically we could put that gearbox on the floor, but then we'd run into, you know, vibration issues because we can't have enough damping on the mounts. We might not have enough suspension travel, so I made the decision just to put these hoops in. Now, I believe he also said, why would I chop a longitudinal bar out, weaken the chassis, just to put, you know, this in that's not necessary. Obviously, I've just shown you why we did it. Now, I chopped out, this is 1.8mm wall welded tube, and what I've put in is a 2.6mm wall CDS tube, and also we've tied it into the top bar, whereas before it was just straight and it wasn't tied in at all. So let me know in the comments, but I do not believe we have weakened it. If anything, we have made it stronger, and it's a necessary evil, you know, because I've just shown you there with the drive shaft, with that bar in, it was going to hit the bar, so, you know, there's no real option there. Also, you know, by no means is this like a tit for tat thingy. I just thought why we had it in, I would explain it. Obviously, we're all going to make mistakes building these cars, you know, they're all different. There's no plan for it, you're just sort of winging it as you go. Obviously I'm doing best I can, and I'm sure, you know, the other guy did. So yeah, hopefully we can get the body off soon, we can get the engine in, and that will give us a better idea, you know, if this whole setup is going to work. Just like that, the body is gone. Now it is the next day, because I had to wait until late last night until Dave was able to come down and give us a hand, but we plonked it on top of the Metro and created the Metro Guinea. Now, not ideal for me if I want to do anything on the Metro, but the plan was always to get the Countach as far as possible first anyway, and then obviously when the Countach, if it ever goes away for bodywork, stuff like that, we'll then crack on with the Metro. Now this is the engine that's going to go in the Datsun. We need to get that down to Liam's at some point, but I'll show you why we needed to take the body off. Now you've seen some of it already. Obviously this bit here where it's just been cut and welded and then ground back, the same up here, but if you look on the other side, so I'm fairly happy with the chassis lower half. Obviously there's a few bits that just don't make sense with suspension wise, like we just physically can't get a nut on this one, but at the top it's mainly sort of the welding. So this one obviously too cold, it's not tied into this bar at all. This weld under here is not finished, this one's been ground, and then just obviously, you know, it's rusting already. Now this whole frame had already been powder coated. Now we're going to leave all powder coating and painting until the end. We're going to build a running and driving car so that you haven't got to pull something back off, you know, grind a bit of powder off to weld a tab to it, and then everything will be evenly, nicely coated at the end. So yeah, today we're going to, I'll pull the gearbox out, we'll get it attached to the engine again, we'll get the old engine crane over, we'll plug the engine in so we can get an idea for engine mounts, and then maybe in the next video I will also look at doing the fuel tanks, because they live in this gap here. They're a bit of a hassle to get in and out, obviously when the body's on. So we'll do as much as we can while the body's off. So yeah, plenty of work, another day out today, so let's get to it. Alright, gearbox on, engine on the crane ready to go. Now it's times like this where you wish you had mates, because wrestling that gearbox on my Todd was not fun, but I'm glad I didn't have a clutch on, because lining that up and getting it on my own would be a fucking nightmare. Now obviously it's not balanced that well, the gearbox is arse end down, but that's what we want anyway, because we want to land the gearbox on these, obviously, because we know we're happy with that. Then we'll lower it down and we'll level the engine where it wants to sit, and then we can have a look at where the engine mounts are going to live. I also forgot to mention, Pete's channel is now live, so he's the sponsor of this build on the channel. His first video went live last Sunday, I believe. It's called Sports Car Story. Now he's got his E-Type on there that was built by Heritage Car Company. Now that thing is immaculate. We're talking like nut and bolt restoration, brand new type deal. So we've got some living up to do with this thing. Might not be quite to that standard. But he's got a nice Murcielago as well. He's having a manual conversion on at the minute, so I am looking forward to seeing that on the channel. But yeah, if you can go and support him as much as you can, that'd be appreciated, and we'll crack on with getting this engine in. Right, so engine is in. Now I'm pretty happy where it landed first time. It's fairly level with the car. There's probably about, I don't know, 10 or 15 mil clearance to sump. So that's probably as low as I'm going to want to go. The drive shaft, I threw sort of a mock drive shaft in. Now it's going, the engine is more forward, or the gearbox is, than the drive shaft would like, but we'll get away with that. Because the other option is chopping these bars out, and for the sake of, you know, 1 or 2 degrees on the drive shaft backwards there, you know, it's not the end of the world. So up front there's a lot more space than I expected, to be honest. So I'd dare to say you could even do that belt with the engine in and the body on. Obviously you would have to probably get in the engine bay and lie on top of the engine. I wouldn't want to do it myself, but you know, it's definitely possible. Now, fuel tanks, so I've just put them in for now. Obviously they live in that area. Now I've ordered some rubber little mounts to mount it on, and we'll make some tabs off this frame here, because, you know, vibration, you don't want that cracking because the exhaust manifold's right there. So we'll try and dampen that as much as we can. But I am going to be waiting for some materials now. So while I will just do some measuring. And yeah, we're going to cut this video there. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them, and I will see you next time.